Hi, I'm Emily, and this is Breezing Through. Today I have a new DIY project for you. So for the second half of 2024, my family lived in Argentina, and they have the best playgrounds in Buenos Aires, like the best. And we went to Vicente Lopez to go to the bioreserve there, and outside of the bioreserve is a playground, and on the playground was this car. And I was in love. I fell in love, and I was like, oh my gosh, my kids are loving this car. I can make this car when we get home. My parents are redoing their yard. They have all of this space. I can remake this car. So we got back into the swing of things, started doing a few projects, decided it was time to make the car. So today I'm going to walk you through how I built the car, tires, the box, everything. Super excited, including the steering wheels. So let's get started. I very much wanted actual tires for this car for a lot of reasons, but mostly because my son, my youngest, loves cars and tires. So I started looking around trying to figure out a place where I could get some used tires. And I had a couple of suggestions, but I ended up just putting a call out on my Instagram stories, and one of my daughter's teachers reached out and said, hey, we moved into this house not that long ago, and there were these 4 used tires in the backyard, and I haven't done anything with them. Do you want them? Of course I did. So I got those from her, and in order to do a good inspection of them, and because they'd been sitting outside for who knows how long, I cleaned all of them really thoroughly. And in that process, I decided that I was going to seal these so that water and debris and animals couldn't get inside them. So I took these 2 pieces of scrap wood that I had and traced the largest part of where like a rim would go for these tires. So I'm basically making wooden rims. And I did have enough space on these 2 pieces of scrap that I was able to do both sides of all 4 tires, which was great. I didn't have to use anything that was really good wood for this. Once all the circles were traced, I then used my circular saw to cut down each circle so that it was its own individual piece of wood, which would make it easier to cut with my jigsaw. And then I used my jigsaw to cut out all of the circles individually. Once those were all cut, I then sanded each circle down just a little bit just to make sure that everything was smooth and completely round. There weren't any flat edges. In order to secure the circle rims to the tires, I then used screws that I just had on hand. I didn't go buy anything separately, and I drilled these screws into the actual tires. That's why I made the circles as big as I did. Because of the screws that I was using and because I'm drilling them into a tire, I did discover that it was easier to do a pilot hole and then drill each screw in. Because tires have a metal mesh that goes through them, this is actually a pretty secure way to do this, but I'm also going to be doing something else in order to ensure that 1, these are completely sealed, but 2, that these rims aren't going to come off. Because I want to make sure that water doesn't get in here and that these stay on here, I am using a clear silicone to seal the wood to the tires. This is the silicone I'm using. It's super easy to use. You just put it in the caulk gun and go all the way around. Once it dried, I then flipped them over and did it on the other side as well. Then it was time to start on the actual car. Because this is for outside play and we live in southeastern Tennessee, I am using ground contact pressure treated wood for the rest of this project. I started off by building the frame. Now this is 8 feet long by 45 inches wide. And I just used deck screws to secure the boards together. And I used 3 additional boards in the middle for additional support. The frame is made out of 2x4s. Once that was done, I started attaching 1x6s to the top to give me a good base to use. This is where those additional 3 support boards came in really handy because it gave me 5 different boards to secure the top part to. Then it was time to start securing the tires to the base. Now, I didn't think about this until after I had put the top boards on, and I realized that the best way to do this was to remove the 2 most outside boards on each side and then screw the tires into the frame from inside the frame. Wasn't a huge deal, but I wish I would have thought of that before I put all of these boards on and then had to take 4 off and replace them. And don't worry, this is not the only way I'm securing the tires to the car. There are going to be other pieces I secure it to later on. Now it's time for the fun part, the actual building of the car. So I'm starting off building the front part of the car. And if you remember from the beginning, there's like a box from the original car. So I'm going to be building a box using 1x6s, and I'm going to do 2 smaller sides and then the front and the back, which are going to be the bigger sides. In order to do this, for each side, I'm taking 4 1x6 boards and joining them together with pocket holes. So I just did this 4 times, 1 for each side. Then I started attaching the sides to the base. So for the first side, I attached it using pocket holes to the base at the very bottom, that last bottom board. And then I attached the tire to this side as well using deck screws. So the front tires are attached to this front box piece, which is also then attached to the base. So none of this is going anywhere. I then attached the other side piece to the base and the other tire, and then started attaching the front and back pieces. Those I also attached to the base using pocket holes, and then I attached them to the side pieces using screws that I drilled through the front of that side of the box into the side. Was this overkill when it comes to securing things? Possibly, but we do live in southeastern Tennessee, and we do get really intense storms and tornadoes, and I didn't want this getting picked up and blown around in the wind at all. So this was important to me to make sure that this was heavy and secure and wasn't going anywhere. I did decide when I was making this box that it was going to actually be a storage box, because why not? I don't think they had that in the original car at the playground in Argentina, but we can do that here, and who doesn't need more storage, especially outdoor storage? In the meantime, I started making the benches for the car. Like the one in Argentina, I did decide to have 2 benches, and I made those benches with a simple 2x4 frame that is the same width as the car with a support piece in the middle. I then added legs to each bench. The back bench I did 9-inch legs on so that it was tall enough so an adult could sit back there and not be super squished. I then secured the bench to the base using pocket screws in the legs, but I also secured it to the back tires because those weren't secured to anything quite yet. For the seat, I used 1x6 boards that again were the same length as the bench. I did 2 of them and just secured them to the frame using deck screws. And then for the backs of the benches, I used these 1x1 pieces that you might recognize as leftovers from when I made the gate for the climbing wall on the treehouse. These are also ground contact pressure treated wood, and so it was the perfect thing to use for the back supports of the benches. I just used deck screws and secured those to the bottom frame of the bench, and then used more 1x6s and secured those to these back support pieces for the back part of the bench. And I used 2 1x6s for that. I placed and secured the back bench first, so then I knew where I was going to put the front bench, because I wanted to make sure there was enough leg room and enough room to walk around between the back bench and the front bench. So then I was able to place the front bench and secure it using pocket holes and screws to the base. So yet again, this is not going anywhere. Then it was time for all the fun details to make it look like an actual car. So the front of this was looking really messy because you could see the frame and the base and all of that. So I took another 1x6 board and cut it to the width of the car and screwed it to the front to make it look like a bumper, but also just to clean it up a little bit. And then I wanted to finish off the storage box. I secured 5 1x6s together with pocket holes to make the lid, but then decided, having talked to my dad, who is a car guy, and this is also in his yard, to remove the top 3 outer pieces of the box and trim them down so they're at an angle, so it looks more like the front of a car, because the fronts of cars are angled. So I just used my circular saw and I trimmed down the 2 side pieces at an angle down to 2 inches at the most, and then the very front piece I trimmed off 2 inches total so that it was 2 inches shorter than the back. I then re-secured them to the top of the box using the pocket holes and the deck screws so that it was actually a frame of a box. Before installing the lid, I did place this piece of wood on the outside of the box right in front of that front bench using 2x4 blocks that I cut at a 45-degree angle so that this piece could sit on top of them and be screwed into them, and then they would be screwed into the box. And this ends up serving as the dashboard and where I end up securing the steering wheels. I got these steering wheels from a local playground company. It's called Creative Cedar Designs. You can look them up online. They ship all over the country. They're super awesome. We loved these colors, and they were $12 each, which is awesome. They do have other colors as well. Not all of the colors are $12. Some of them are $24, just to keep in mind. I was completing this project during spring break, so my daughter was around and had a lot of chance to provide input to me. So once I put the steering wheels in, I had her come and sit and tell me what she thought. And the first thing she told me was, "I want a gas pedal, Mom." So I just got some scrap wood and put 2 gas pedals in, one by each steering wheel, so that everybody could have one. Obviously, these are not functional, but it was just fun to have them. It was important to install the dashboard and the steering wheels first before installing the lid of the storage box, because I needed to make sure that those things were not in the way of where the storage box lid was installed and how it opened. So I attached 3 hinges to the inside of the lid and then attached the lid to the box. I will say that after I attached the lid and played with it a little bit, I did not love how insecure this lid felt. I felt like the pocket holes and the screws were not keeping it completely together, and it was going to have a lot of movement. So I did get some scrap pieces and I secured them to the inside of the lid perpendicular to the direction that the lid boards are going. So now this lid is very heavy, meaning kids and animals can't get into it, which is ideal. And it's also very secure. I also installed a handle because otherwise then you'd have to find a good place to grab on the lid and pull up. Having the handle just made that easier. I found the center of the box and then centered the handle on that point and attached it there. And of course, because I'm me and I couldn't just leave it there, I wanted a few more little details. So I took a few more pieces of scrap wood. These thinner pieces I spray painted black, made sure they were all the same length, let those dry. And then I also took these bigger scrap pieces and painted them white. The white pieces I secured to the front of the box, and they are headlights, which is so fun. I just attached those using the brad nailer and a level to make sure they were at the same point on the front of the car. And then the black pieces are a grill. And these were a little trickier to install because of how thick they were. I had to do it from the inside of the box instead of outside of the box. And standing there, holding the lid up with my back, which is very heavy, and trying to figure out where to put the brad nailer to make sure that it went through each piece. It was definitely more complicated than I wanted it to be, but I made it work. It's not lined up exactly the way I would like, but it's fine for now. I will likely have to replace them because they will get weathered over time, and I'll figure out a better way to do this. Those final finishing touches were it. Box and the car were completely done. So one of the cool things about this box is it is big enough to fit in one of those old Little Tikes wagons. My parents have one in the yard, and my mom wanted to keep it a little bit more protected than it has been. And check that out. It just fits perfectly into the front of the car. And here is the completely finished car. I love this thing. The one thing I did not show you was that I added a tray onto the front bench so that the back bench had a place to put snacks and drinks if kids wanted to do that. And there you have it. Obviously, the biggest difference between this car and the one from Buenos Aires is I don't have the awning over top. I did decide that this is in the shade almost all the time. And here in Tennessee, it rains a lot. We get a lot of bugs and a lot of birds, and they would just end up nesting in there. So opted to not do that part. Also, my kids are tall and we're already hitting their heads on the one in Argentina, so I decided not to do that. Let me know if you want build plans for this, because honestly, it's not that hard to throw that together. And I think this is a pretty cool project and can really be replicated anywhere. It'd be really awesome for a playground, for a private yard like here. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video if you in fact liked it, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.